Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something I know a lot of you are interested in mastering English.
It's a popular one.
It is, and you've shared some really interesting material with me that we're going to unpack some insider tips
Right.
from a native French speaker's perspective.
Interesting.
Even for someone like me who grew up with English, this offers a fresh angle.
It's fascinating how examining a language through the lens of someone learning it can reveal so much.
Absolutely. And what really jumped out at me in this source was the emphasis on English as a living language,
Yeah.
always evolving.
Yeah.
We're going to delve into the nuances of grammar and pronunciation that can be tricky for non-native speakers.
Mm.
And we'll explore why focusing solely on vocabulary isn't the key to fluency.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
It's not just about memorizing words, it's about understanding how the language works.
Okay.
For example, the source mentions how English is constantly changing.
Right.
Think about the rise of internet slang, eat, slay, mood. These words weren't even around a few years ago. And even grammar rules shift over time.
You know, I noticed that
Yeah.
the way we use commas, for instance, seems to be getting more relaxed.
Uh-huh.
I guess that's what they mean by a living language. It's never static.
It's true.
But that brings up a good point for you as a learner.
Yeah.
There are so many different varieties of English out there. British, American, Australian, and so on.
Right. And they each have their own quirks of pronunciation, vocabulary, and even grammar.
Oh, wow.
I'd say don't get too bogged down in those variations at the beginning.
Okay.
Focusing on what's often called standard English is a great starting point.
Yeah.
It's like learning the basic dance steps before trying out different styles.
Makes sense. Build that solid foundation first.
Right.
Okay, so we've established that English is dynamic and comes in different flavors.
Yes.
But let's talk about grammar.
Okay.
I've heard French is quite complex in that department.
It can be.
Does English grammar pose similar challenges?
It's interesting. English grammar might seem deceptively simple at first, especially compared to French.
Really?
No genders for nouns to memorize.
Okay.
No elaborate verb conjugations based on subject and tense.
That's definitely a relief.
Right. But here's the thing.
Okay.
While the rules might seem less intricate on the surface, mastering the core structures of English grammar is absolutely crucial.
I see.
Verbs like to be and to have are your workhorses.
Okay.
And understanding how to use them in various tenses is fundamental.
Okay.
Then you have prepositions articles.
Uh-huh.
These might seem small, but they can trip you up if you're not careful.
You know, as a native speaker, I never really think about those small words.
Yeah,
But you're right, they're everywhere.
they are.
And I can imagine they're even trickier when you're coming from a language with a completely different grammatical structure.
Absolutely. One example the source highlights is the use of articles a, n, and the
Right.
French has articles too,
Yeah.
but they function quite differently.
Okay.
For example, in English, you say, I have a headache,
Right.
but in French, you'd say, j'ai mal à la tête.
Literally, I have pain to the head.
Ah, so that's why sometimes French speakers accidentally leave out articles in English
Yes.
or use them in unexpected ways.
Exactly. It's a subtle but important difference that can affect clarity and flow.
Yeah.
So while English grammar might not be as complex as French in some aspects, it still has its nuances that need to be mastered for fluency.
Okay, so we've covered the dynamic nature of English and the importance of grammar, but what about pronunciation? English spelling can be a nightmare.
It absolutely can. And the source brings up a particularly tricky sound for French speakers.
Oh, yeah.
The A sound as in this or think.
Oh, I can see how that would be tough.
Yeah.
In French, you have sounds similar to Z or S,
Right.
but nothing quite like that th. Do you have any tips for mastering that sound?
It takes practice, but it's definitely doable. The
Okay.
key is to position your tongue correctly.
All right.
Lightly touch the tip of your tongue to the back of your top teeth and push air out.
There are some great videos online that visually demonstrate how to make the sound.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And remember, listening to native speakers is crucial.
Right.
Pay attention to how they form the sound and try to mimic it.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
I've heard that watching movies and TV shows in English can be helpful for picking up pronunciation, intonation, and even slang.
Absolutely. It's a fun and effective way to immerse yourself in the language. Speaking of immersion,
Okay.
The source emphasizes the importance of active practice, not just passive listening or reading.
Gotcha.
Think language exchange partners, online conversation groups, or even just talking to yourself in English.
Talking to yourself. I've done that. Sometimes I catch myself narrating my day in English
Yeah.
just to get the practice in. It feels a bit silly, but it helps.
Whatever works.
Yeah.
The point is to make the language a part of your daily life,
Right.
not just something you study from a textbook. And this brings us to another important point the source raises.
Okay.
Don't let the vastness of English vocabulary overwhelm you.
I can imagine that's a big hurdle.
Yeah.
English has so many words, it can feel like trying to drink from a fire hose.
Right, but instead of getting bogged down in memorizing dictionaries, focus on high-frequency words in context.
Okay.
Think about the words you use most often in your daily life, those related to your work, your hobbies, your family.
Right.
Mastering those core words will give you a solid foundation to build upon.
So it's about quality over quantity, really understanding and being able to use the word you learn rather than just recognizing them in a list.
Exactly, and that leads us to another key takeaway from the source.
Okay.
One that I think is especially important for language learners.
All right.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Oh, I'm all about embracing mistakes.
Good.
I've made more than my fair share while learning languages.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I once told a Spanish shopkeeper I wanted to buy un burro instead of un bolso.
Oh, no.
Let's just say he looked at me a bit strangely.
A donkey instead of a handbag is quite a mix-up,
It is.
but it illustrates a valuable point.
Yeah.
Mistakes are inevitable. It's true.
And they're actually a crucial part of the learning process.
I love that perspective. It takes the pressure off trying to be perfect all the time.
Exactly. View those mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow.
Mm-hmm.
When you stumble over a grammar rule or mispronounce a word, you become more aware of it and are more likely to get it right next time.
I see.
And honestly, most native English speakers are quite forgiving.
Oh, good.
They care more about understanding your message than about perfect grammar or accent.
So it's more about communication than perfection.
Precisely, the goal is to express yourself clearly and confidently,
Okay.
even if you make a few mistakes along the way. And remember, fluency builds over time.
Right.
It's a journey, not a destination.
That's a great reminder. It's easy to get discouraged when you feel like you're not progressing as quickly as you'd like.
Absolutely, and that's why the source emphasizes the importance of patience and perseverance.
Okay.
Set realistic goals for yourself.
Sure.
Set realistic goals for yourself. Celebrate small victories, and don't give up.
Every bit of effort you put in brings you closer to fluency. What stands out to you from this material we've been discussing, thinking about your own language learning journey?
You know what resonates most with me is that idea of English as a living, breathing entity. It's constantly evolving, adapting, and taking on new forms.
Yeah.
And that means there's always something new to learn, new nuances to discover. It's not just about reaching a certain level of proficiency. It's about embracing the dynamism of the language.
That's such a great point, and it makes the journey even more engaging, wouldn't you say?
I think so.
It's like exploring a vast and ever-changing landscape.
Right.
And while standard English is certainly valuable as a foundation,
Yeah.
I think the source also subtly hints at something else that can enrich your experience.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, think about it. If English is constantly evolving,
Yeah.
that means it's also full of fascinating regional variations, slang, and even historical forms.
Okay.
Exploring these can not only deepen your understanding of the language, but also connect you with different cultures and communities.
That's a fantastic idea. It's like going beyond the textbook and discovering the hidden treasures of the language. You know, I once spent some time in Scotland,
Oh, cool.
and I was completely charmed by the local dialect, words like we for small and I for yes. They just added so much color and personality to the conversations.
Exactly. And those regionalisms often have fascinating historical roots, for example. Did you know that many words and phrases used in Appalachian English are actually closer to the English spoken in Shakespeare's time than modern Standard English?
Wow, I had no idea. That makes exploring those dialects even more intriguing.
Yeah.
Like stepping back in time. So what I'm hearing is that while it's important to have a solid grasp of Standard English, branching out and exploring these other facets of the language can add a whole new level of depth and enjoyment to the learning process.
Absolutely. It's like adding spices to your language repertoire.
I like that.
It makes the journey more flavorful and rewarding. So to you listening, I'd say embrace the challenge, celebrate the victories, and never stop exploring English is a gift that keeps on giving.
Beautifully said. And remember, we're here to support you on your journey. If you have any questions, any aha moments you want to share, or even just want to connect with fellow English enthusiasts, feel free to reach out. The Deep Dives is all about community, And we're excited to be a part of your language learning adventure.